Welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name is Abbie Richie. You can find me right here every Tuesday talking with people who are engaged in age tech. I am the founder of Senior Savvy, which helps older adults with their technology. So I get it. It's not always easy. Before I bring on my guests, I want to go ahead and run our intro. Welcome back. And if you all were with us last week, I just want to say, holy smokes, this week is already so much better. Last week we had some terrible Wi-Fi issues, but I'm back in my studio office today, and I'm so thrilled to bring on my guests. So first, I want to welcome my guest from Fynn, and I've got Rob come on to the show. And we also have John Thomas. And we have one other guest with us today, and that is Josh Peterson. Welcome to Tech Tuesday.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you are welcome. So let's start first with my friends from Fynn. Rob and John, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Rob Lewis, President COO of Fynn. I've been in this industry for about 4 years now. I've spent about 20 plus years in technology in a variety of different industries, including operations, supply chain, all the way up to healthcare. And I joined Fynn.io when I had a personal experience where my father was suddenly in need of care, and quickly went through some of the problems that we're trying to solve and solve the immediate need for a solution in the industry, and jumped over. So haven't looked back since.
Like a true entrepreneur, when there's a problem, you find a way to fix it and to jump on it. And there's so many of us in senior living who have had a similar story. And I'm so glad that you took the initiative to do just that. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
And I want to also introduce and bring on John Thomas. John, welcome to Tech Tuesday. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Abbie. So I'm John Thomas. I'm the CTO at Fynn. I guess by way of background, I am a data scientist by both training and accident. I've spent the better part of the last 20 years figuring out ways that we can leverage data to change industries. I joined Fynn about 1.5 years ago, and have been excited to see what we can do from a data perspective to really bring some of the cool stuff going on in AI and machine learning to the space. So excited to be here.
I love that, how you got into it accidentally and similar to me, and that there is such a developing growth factor when it comes to AI and all of the data. And it's so crucial that we start to put it to use. So and with that in mind, I want to introduce my next guest. We've got Joshua Peterson. Joshua, welcome to Tech Tuesday. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, Abbie, thanks for having me. My name is Joshua Peterson. I am the president of Gallery Management. I've been in the industry for 14 years, started off as a nurse, have worked really in every capacity at senior living community, and very excited to be here and talk a little bit about how we use Fynn at the communities.
Great. It's always wonderful, not only to have an inventor on to talk about technology, but how it's actually impacting people. And we like to do that by telling stories and having real operators on the show and residents so that they can give their perspective. So I want to start here by asking how Fynn.io improves your residents' lives.
Abbie, is that a question for Joshua or for any of us?
For any of you, let's hear it.
So I'll start, and then maybe John and Joshua can kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. So with Fynn, what we're doing is we have a fundamental belief that all operational efficiency stems from a deeper, better understanding of our residents, right? Mm-hmm. So if we can really start focusing on the cues that the residents are giving the staff, we can anticipate changing acuity with anticipation. And of course, the staff to do lots of different things, right? That they could be engaging the family earlier, they could be engaging physicians earlier to make changes to medication. The community can introduce new programming or even change their staffing model to better serve those residents. And so that's really kind of the mantra, the underlying thesis behind Fynn, which is, provide an operational platform that addresses all of the critical needs of the community, but really hone in on what are we learning, what can we learn from the residents so that we can improve operationally. And obviously the outcome of that is better outcomes, health outcomes for those residents as well.
100%. So smart too. How about for Joshua, how would you say that Fynn.io is improving the residents at your community? Improving the lives of residents. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. As an operator, as a nurse, when I think of Fynn, I think of being proactive, being able to pivot and adjust based on the residents' needs in real time. I think of triage comes to mind, being able to better plan your day so it's more impactful for the resident based on their needs. So it adds additional transparency and insight into, the resident's day and how they're doing. So that's really how I think it helps us as operators.
Yeah. Are you able to give me an example of, a resident or or staff who was able to review some of the data and then go in and make some immediate changes?
Yeah, I think an example that would come to mind is a resident that may be a little bit more disengaged or a little more isolated, being able to track those trends, and the nurse being able to intervene a little quicker to make sure that the resident's not withdrawing, or maybe they need some additional insight, or heaven forbid, let's say there's a UTI that may be brewing. We're able to get ahead of this a little bit quicker.
And within that same framework, Fynn.io can also connect with families so that the families are aware of maybe this sense of isolation or UTI, right?
That is correct. Yeah, go ahead, Joshua.
Oh, I was going to let you take that one, but yes.
Yes, one of the things that we do is try to improve the transparency of the information that we have about the residents, and the key component of that is sharing what is happening on a daily basis with the residents, with that family. So again, we really kind of think about it as a taking care of seniors is really a team effort, right? And family and the physicians and the entire ecosystem is part of that team. So the more that we can share with them, the more engaged they can become, the better it is for everyone.
Absolutely.
Abbie, if I give you a little bit more information, what I found really interesting in the space is if you go and talk to any of the CNAs or caregivers for residents, they actually know the resident very, very well, right? They know what they like, what they don't like, when they're feeling great, when they're feeling off. But the challenge is that data kind of lives in their head. And then they go home for the day and they might forget about it, or they might forget to tell the next person what's going on.
Yeah.
One of the things that we really focus on at Fynn is collecting that data as it happens. So every time we have an interaction between a CNA and a staff member, we collect the behaviors associated with that interaction. And those behaviors are stored in a digital platform and provide a profile of how those residents actually act over time. And there's some really interesting analysis and insights that you can draw by looking at those data points and changes in those data points. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of those.
And Jesse, who's a great participant here, wanted to know, what system does Fynn interface with to collect that data? Does it interface with other programs, or is it standalone?
We do have interactions with other programs, but it's primarily standalone, especially when it comes to behavior collection. So we have our own EHR system where this information is actually tracked on a day-to-day basis.
And you may have mentioned this, and perhaps I missed it, but for the information, the data to be tracked right away, is that input into a phone, into a computer? How is the CNA doing that?
Yeah, all of the above, actually. So the Fynn platform is designed to be device agnostic. You can run it from your laptop, on a tablet that the community might have, or your own personal device for anybody that allows their CNAs to bring their device with them. We see the most usage through the kind of bring your own device, the native apps there. And then all of the ADLs and tasks that our CNAs have to complete on a day-to-day basis are made available to that person. As they complete them, that's where the behavior collection happens.
And I'm the kind of person who can never remember acronyms and abbreviations. So what does ADL stand for?
Yeah, activities of daily living. The primary kind of like bit of care that we think about, especially in the senior living space.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. And now, I know that the platform is able to forecast costs, right? Based on trends. How does that work out?
For sure. So, one of the things that we observe is that in general, the progression through senior living looks roughly the same. That is, if you took 1,000 people that have gone through senior living, you can kind of see degradation of kind of condition over a period of time. And by looking at somebody's current state and how it's changed over time, we can actually map it towards other people that have looked similarly before them. And that allows us to make accurate predictions of what their likely health outcomes are going to be over a period of time. We use that to figure out places where we can proactively intervene. Are there things that we can do now to give people more good days in the time that they have left? But also, in the case where, the kind of like the condition is playing out to its end, we have an expectation based on historical data on what that looks like.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Are there any examples that come to mind, like any residents or staffing situations that come to mind when you're thinking about forecasting costs, like, based on how the holiday was this year, we're going to do it differently this year or something like that?
Yeah, I might take it a slightly different way. I don't know if we might be able to pull up a graph, but I can show you some kind of ideas of where that starts to come into play. So I don't know if it's possible to pull up our first kind of profile. Perfect. This is awesome. So, I mentioned, let me orient us all really quickly because I know this is covering my face. In this case, what we're actually looking at is this behavior that we collect. The y-axis on these graphs are better behavior. These are things that we want to see our residents doing more of, and the bottom of the graph is more negative behaviors, things we want to see our residents doing less of. And in this case, I'm looking at a 24-hour profile for one of our residents. So on the far left is just after midnight, and on the far right is just before midnight. And we think about this resident kind of like our baseline. So if we collected behaviors of any of us on this phone call, or anybody probably watching this, you would find that if you woke us up in the middle of the night, we would probably not be super excited to see you. We probably wouldn't cooperate. We might want you to go away, and we might be somewhat confused. But by the time we get up in the morning, we have our coffee, we reach something close to our peak, and we maintain that peak till the end of the day when we get ready to go back to bed. Now, let's contrast that to the second resident here.
Okay.
This resident is one of our memory care residents, and they actually have dementia. And you can see that their curve has a similar shape, but instead of kind of like hitting negative behaviors at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, they're actually dropping off right around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And this is a common phenomenon known as sundowning. Yep. So, like many things with dementia, your body forgets what it's supposed to be doing. It forgets when it's supposed to be asleep. And we see this in many of our residents. And that's not terribly surprising. I mentioned that person had dementia. But let me show you how we can use it proactively. So if we pull up the third graph, this is actually one of our assisted living residents. And what we're actually seeing here is somebody who is transitioning from that first graph, that baseline graph, to a sundowner's graph. So we see this person over time, their behaviors are becoming more and more related to, okay, we're seeing signs of dementia and Alzheimer's. And this is an opportunity for us to start thinking about what proactive interventions can we have? Is there a medication change that might help? Might be a timing of medication. Or is this time to start engaging with the family to say, hey, look, 6 months ago, your mom looked like this, and today she looks like this, and now we really need to start thinking about memory care for her.
Right.
And so that's how we actually start to use this information from a forecasting perspective, because as you can imagine, over time, we're going to see more and more of that middle curve emerge.
And Abbie, the information that John was just sharing, that really makes the conversation with the family easier, right? You actually have quantifiable information that you can share with them. You can share the trend, and instead of just having that one-off saying, hey, it feels like your mom might need to move into memory care, you can actually show something to support that, to substantiate it, which is important.
And on the family side, so what are they seeing when it comes to, say, those dips? What are they seeing on their side?
Yeah, great question.
Yep, go ahead, John. Please take.
No, please go.
Yeah, we're sharing something similar. We don't expose the level of information that John was just showing on the screen, but what we may share with the family is something to the effect of, mom is doing slightly worse than she did yesterday, but we position that also with what are we doing to address that change. And we also provide the family a way to interact with some predefined questions and answers back and forth with staff, so that they can ask some information, the staff can appropriately respond back in a controlled way, and in a way that really prevents them, or doesn't prevent them, but they can do quickly without pulling them off of their primary job of caring for that loved one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, families need to know that, as well as employees. So there's something else I wanted to chat with you about, and that's the ability to drive NOI. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, John, do you want to pull up and talk to the one slide? It might be 5, where we're talking about.
While we're doing that, can you explain what NOI means?
Net operating income. Just think of it as profitability, if you will, for a community.
Okay. All right. So if someone is considering using Fynn to drive NOI, what does that look like?
So when you start thinking about driving NOI at these communities, it's really about making sure that the residents are in the community at the appropriate level of care for as long as possible, right? You want to minimize churn. You want to minimize people walking out the back door, and you want to provide a good customer experience so that naturally generates demand. And so the way that Fynn really helps with that, there are a number of ways that we touch on it, but one of the most direct ways is by anticipating these incidents and avoiding them altogether. That helps us keep the residents safer in the community for as long as possible. As an example, when someone experiences an incident that requires them to go to the emergency room, that trip to the ER may keep them out of the community for a number of days while they go into skilled nursing. They always have issues recovering from that. It also alleviates the need for the staff at the community to dig in and do the research, the due diligence, and the recovery on the actual incident itself. And so it really is about maintaining the wellness of the resident in the community to prevent them from exiting. John, anything you want to add to that based on that data?
No, I think that's 100% correct. It's really about being able to anticipate when things are likely to happen and proactively intervene before they do. And if you can do that well, not only do you have happier residents and staff, but they also stay longer. You have to deal with less turnover, finding more people, and driving up your NOI.
Right.
And is it not just exiting, but also moving to a different level of care?
Correct. So as an example, one of the things that we do a lot of inside the Fynn platform is we reconcile delivered care against billed care. So by looking at the total number of time, ADLs, and level of effort we're putting into each resident, we can then compare that to what are we actually billing this resident for. And in many of the communities that we're live at, when we do that kind of reconciliation, we do see opportunities for, hey, we've been underbilling some of these residents for a period of time relative to the care that they're getting today. And then the community has a conversation or decision to make internally. Hey, do we want to go have that conversation now, or maybe do we want to work with the family to try to figure out are there small changes we can make to recoup that cost over a period of time? But really exposing that discrepancy gives the community information to go decide on the right way to act.
Yeah, I have been in different communities working with clients for several years now, and maybe a handful of times I've walked in to help someone one-on-one in their apartment and thought immediately, like, oh, they're not in the right place, right? Or the resident care manager needs to know about what's happening here, or their adult children need to know where they're at in their abilities, because they can hide a lot and they can get away with a lot until someone is in your actual living space,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes back to what John was saying earlier, which is the best caregivers intuitively know what's going on with the people that they're caring for. And what we're trying to do is take that data and put it into a system where it can be shared with everyone, all the stakeholders that are engaged. Once you've done that, then you can make an educated decision about what is the right path forward for that person to keep them happier, healthier, longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, keeping a digital record of that stuff is very important. For anybody on this call that has kids, what happens is actually really funny. You look at your kid and you think like, oh, I know exactly what they look like and how they are. And then you look at a picture of them like 6 months ago and a year ago, and you're like, I forgot how far they have come in that period of time. And so by collecting this behavior data over a period of time, you actually get these snapshots where you intuitively might not realize, oh, mom's getting a little worse every day, a little worse every day, a little worse every day. It's so small that you don't pick it up. But then by looking at these longer time chunks, you can see a really transformative difference.
Gotcha. You touched on something about sustainability, and I wanted to talk about healthy sustainability and how that's an important aspect of Fynn.io.
Give us a little more specificity about what you're looking for regarding sustainability.
I just saw it on your website. I was curious about it. Health sustainability. What does that mean to you? Why is that important to you as a company?
Yeah, so health sustainability is a concept that's it's inclusive of Fynn and technology, but it's a broader concept, right? It's really about creating an environment where seniors can thrive, where they're supported, where they have access to the medical care that they need, the information that powers the medical decisions that are being put into place, and the physical environment that contributes to kind of their overall well-being, giving them something to engage the mind and the body to keep them happier and healthier. We believe it's a really important way of thinking about better care for the senior community, and that's why we're involved with it, because we do believe that you've got the responsibility as someone caring for the elderly to really understand them and to support them in any way you can, and technology is just one component of that. So that's why we're involved. We do think that is kind of the future of senior living. We do think that there's a lot of opportunity for improvement in the way that seniors are cared for, and we want to help kind of guide that mission.
Awesome. I want to shift into another area. Usually when we talk about senior living, there are two areas. There is the staffing, right? And then there's also occupancy. So I want to talk about how Fynn.io focuses on the staffing piece and how the data is being used by the staff.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to kind of take that one, because I think it's actually a really interesting topic. That the turnover in our industry is so high, and it's so hard to find the right people and keep them for a period of time. And one thing we've actually observed from collecting this behavior data is we can actually use it to identify friction points between individual staff members and residents. And I don't know if we have a graph available for us, but let me, if we pull up resident one before, I can show you what that looks like. So I'm going to show you the same type of graph as I showed you before: good behavior towards the top, worse behavior towards the bottom. And in this case, I'm actually showing you the interactions between individual caregivers on the x-axis in this resident. And as you can kind of see, because the circle kind of calls it out for us, is in general, this resident has pretty good behavior, except for the interactions with caregiver 9. Mm-hmm. And there's really two possibilities here. Possibility one is maybe this is a training opportunity. Maybe there's something about the way that caregiver 9 is approaching this resident that we could correct with a little bit of training. So maybe our wellness director should shadow this interaction the next time it happens and see if there's something we can do from an approach perspective. The second possibility is people are people, and sometimes people don't get along, and that's totally fine. But what we should really try to do in that case is we should try to avoid to make sure that caregiver 9 isn't actually interacting with resident 1 to the best of our ability. That's going to make resident 1 happier, driving this health sustainability. It's going to make resident or caregiver 9 happier, right? They're not going to have these friction-based interactions. They might stick around longer and be overall happy. In this particular case, we actually know what happened. This was actually a training opportunity. So this resident likes to be given a lot of direction in their day. So every interaction should start with, hey, what's our purpose? What are we going to do? What's our day going to look like? And if you do that, the day goes off great. But if you open the day with, what do you want to do? Lots of things we could do. It kind of like goes sideways. Right. And so with a little bit of training, we were actually able to correct that. And when we re-looked at the data after the training, we can actually see that friction point is gone. So this resident 9 interaction is more kind of in line with our baseline. So simple training, things like that, makes the overall wellness of the community go up.
Joshua, I'm curious from your standpoint, how you have been able to address situations like this with different caregivers.
Yeah, so I think to John's point, being able to identify, is it a training opportunity? One other thing that this data illustrates is the amount of work each caregiver is doing for us to be able to better load balance and be a little bit more proactive. Because a lot of times in senior living, you hear caregivers saying all the time, this is so much work, or I'm doing so much. And now we've got that level of transparency to be able to see what they're doing and then be able to pivot in real time. So, just because someone, say, moved in at one level of care doesn't mean that in 2 weeks they haven't progressed to another level of care. And instead of waiting for the caregiver to come to us to say, oh my goodness, this is so much more for me, we're able to then balance out that workload in real time. And, that then translates into a lower turnover rate for our staffing, happier staff, happier residents, happier families. So, it really comes full circle.
And are you able to use the same type of feature in staffing and onboarding?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think you could. As far as staffing goes, for sure, being able to identify, are we staffing appropriately based on the residents' needs?
Yeah.
And then in onboarding, I think that would translate nicely into onboarding as well. But certainly from a staffing perspective, making sure that we are staffing correctly based on the residents' needs, because those can be variable. They can change. So absolutely.
And when you're forecasting your technology, what are you thinking about next? What's on your plate for next?
John, would you like to take the roadmap conversation?
Yeah. Actually, there's a lot that's actually happening next. But maybe if I gave you a flavor of what's next, we looked at a few different graphs here today, and I'm a data nerd, so I love graphs. But in reality, nobody has time to look at graphs. When they look at graphs, they don't really know what they're looking for. When they find something, they don't necessarily know what to do. And then when they do something, they don't always follow up and see, was that the right thing to do? And so a lot of the focus of Fynn is actually, how do we use this information predictively in a way that fits naturally into somebody's workflow? So can we proactively identify, here's a staff member that needs training. Here's a resident that needs a different level of care. Here's somebody who needs a clinical intervention, and make that part of the workflow so we're not relying on people to actually make those judgment calls on our behalf, right? We're freeing up people to do the thing that they're really good at, which is give really great care. We're just augmenting their decision-making with some better insights using data. And so I think what you're going to see a lot of next is starting to see other ways that we use this behavior data to drive those positive outcomes.
Yeah, and Abbie, it's probably worth mentioning, I'm not sure if we've stated it explicitly, Fynn is only looking for basically deviations from what we would expect in normal behavior. We are not diagnosing. We are using this information, as John was kind of indicating, to let people know that there's a change, and we need to engage the right people to intervene.
Right. Small changes could equal big problems.
Exactly.
Right?
You got it.
Exactly. Well, good. I did get a little distracted, John, when I heard you say the word flavor. I thought chocolate, but it didn't go in that direction at all.
I thought about it, but I figured people might be more vanilla, might be more strawberry. You never know.
Yeah, I'm 100% chocolate. So if there's a question, you know which team I'm on. Okay.
All right. Well, that's the wrong team, but I understand.
Some people get distracted by data. I get distracted by flavors. So, well, guys, I want to give our audience and our viewers an opportunity to understand where is the best place that they could reach you.
I think the best way to reach all of us, we'll make sure that Joshua gets included in that, is sales@fynn.io. John and I will both be getting any references that go to that email address, and we will respond accordingly.
Awesome. And Joshua, yourself included, is that right?
So for myself, it would be joshua@galleryliving.com.
Okay. And we just may have to update that in just a minute or so. But guys, I want to thank you so much for being here. And thank you for our audience as well for chiming in with the questions. And people had some good comments there. And we're going to be sure to rebroadcast this tomorrow so that anyone who missed it or wants to go back and listen again has the opportunity to do that. And is there anything, final parting words you'd like to say before we sign off?
It's been a pleasure. We are very thankful for giving us the opportunity to talk about this, and we are looking forward to hearing from anyone who sees us and has an interest in chatting more.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes just having the ability to talk a little bit more about what you're doing brings awareness to it and exposure, and that's what we need, right?
Absolutely. You got it.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Joshua, anything else?
No, thank you
for having us.
Okay, my pleasure, my pleasure. Well, thank you again for joining us today. We will see you back here next week for Tech Tuesday.